All right, so with ChatGPT, one thing that we could do, like with our last homework assignment, if we come back here to that one, which was for Streamlit, and it wasn't really a homework assignment, we were just looking at some of that material. We'll actually go back here to week 5 when we talked about mini project 2 and Kaggle. So we could have one of these data sets. This is one of the issues that you had there, right? And let's look at, for example, graduate employment data set. It's a comprehensive list of financial, medical, environmental information spanning. Okay, this looks like a decent data set. So let's take a look here and grab the CSV file from them. Maybe. Come on. Down. And download here. Let's throw it in here. Okay, so that CSV file I just grabbed, we can see things like college numbers of IDs of different people, and it looks like we have tons of records in here. If we scroll down, you see we got, appears to be just over 10,000 records, something like that. So pretty good amount of records as we're coming up. It looks like we got information like IQ and some other ones there. Let's see, I'll show again. Previous semester result, GPAs, performance, internship experience, curriculum, communication skills, project placement. Yes. So we could take this data set, and if it's not too large in terms of file size, it works really well within ChatGPT. So let's pull up ChatGPT again. Too many windows up here. And if we just drag and drop that CSV file in here, and if we remember in the CSV, let's look at something like the question, out of this survey data or out of this data, how many people have placements? How many projects have completed, score skills, et cetera. So for us, we were using Streamlit, right? So we can say using Streamlit and Python, I want to build a dashboard for this data set. I want to highlight graphs and charts as necessary. Let's see here. Want to make sure to display as much statistical as possible. All right, so let's see what the free version does here. But if you give it enough context, like one, the particular framework you want to use, call it Streamlit, Python, give it that kind of information. I'm going to do another demo here on another data set. So it's going to analyze it, give you a little bit of information, especially when it's a CSV. It works really well with Streamlit. And so for this, it's going to give you a concept of what your Streamlit dashboard would look like. So it'll have an overview section with some data statistics, et cetera, count of students on the college ID. Then it'll have a second section that's based off academic and performance analysis, internship project analysis, and then predictive insights. So it's going to ask, do you want us to go ahead and generate this code for this kind of stuff? We could also say, even though this particular data set doesn't match, but if you had something to say, this is all Fort Hays State University. This is data from FHSU. Let's see, Fort Hays State University in Hays, Kansas. Now, obviously this data isn't, but the idea here is you're going to find some things in ChatGPT that will now go out and recognize it is FHSU. So when it builds the dashboard, it's going to help tailor it as if it is FHSU. So we can also say, pull this in here. Okay, it's going to use that for future context. So now it's going to say, can I add the university name and location to the Streamlit dashboard for metadata, show a small map of Hayes, use the university name and the plots and titles of exporter titles. So again, the more information you spend in the beginning in it, it's going to generate much better code as we go through there. Let's see. Let's go and say color scheme should reflect the gold and black colors of the university. Okay. So there again, what's nice is it's just getting you through the planning stage, right? So we get to decide, do we want this as a single page dashboard or should we have it with multiple tabs and pages? Let's go with multiple tabs and pages. Okay. And then do you want us to go ahead and generate this? Say yes. All right. So it's going to give you information on how to actually use this, which is great because it does want it to be in the same folder as the CSV data. So to test this, let's go ahead and set up a new project. So let's do something like GitHub. And let's do a new project. And we could say GPT Streamlit, just as some random name here. Let's do a git ignore Python. Oops. There we go. No license, create a repository. Go ahead and add a README. That looks great. Let's pull up our mini project here and let's start up a new one. Project control. And let's grab our GPT Streamlit. Grab us a new interpreter. And so this week is all about just kind of doing things like this so that you get familiar with bringing things back and forth. Now, Streamlit itself is pretty slick because it's just one file that you have to end up producing. You may have multiple files in there. When you work with the other two frameworks, such as Flask and Django, you're going to have lots of files, and therefore there's lots of moving parts. But there's things it definitely does better than it did just using this one solely. Let's make sure that everything's set up like it's supposed to. Let's go to our git ignore, scroll all the way down, grab our idea. That looks good. Our README, that's good. Again, this is just a sample project so you guys can access it. And we could say something like, so that looks good. And then in this case, it wants us to pull, if we go back to our GPT down here, it wants us to add these individual packages. So let's go ahead and copy that code. And we can simply paste that into our terminal. Again, make sure you're already in your virtual environment. Take just a few seconds to get you started. While we're waiting on this, do you guys have any questions online?
I don't have any questions, but I didn't realize that when I do a pip install like that, I can do multiple packages all in one step.
You can, yep. Yeah, when you if you were telling the user to do a pip install, that's usually pretty common that you could just expand them out here with just spaces inside of there.
Okay. So there's no special delimiter other than just the space, right?
Just a space. Yep.
Okay.
The alternative is obviously you could use your pip requirement spot, right? And that one
Right.
more explicit. So let's go ahead and do that. Pip freeze greater than requirements text. Make sure we got that file out. That looks good. Okay. And then let's go back and follow along here. So you'll notice this ends up creating this app.py, and the ChatGPT will create one of two things. It will either give you the code like this in the straightforward there. The other option is it may create what's called kind of a workspace, and it'll pop out in a second screen, and you can just download that file directly. So let's go ahead and copy this on the free one here. And we're going to create our main.py. That looks good. Let's add it to the repository and we'll paste it all in. Let's go in here. Now you'll notice up here at the top, it's saying that there's package requirements that haven't showed up yet. That's because our underlying system is still building, in this case, skeletons, which is just installing all those packages that we did up here above. It's installed, but the project is trying to catalog all of those files so that it can double check these requirements, which you see up here. So this should go away as soon as this updating skeletons is done down here. Well, wait a minute. If you click on that, you can see down here, it's trying to update all those packages and build kind of a little database of everything you installed. So while that's doing that, let's look up here a little bit and see different import packages and things like that of what it's actually trying to do. By the way, in my videos, if you end up seeing this over here where it says you moments ago, uncommitted changes or whatever, ignore that. That's just a little package I added on here the other day that's handy when I'm doing a bunch of other work. Under plugins, you'll see ones I got installed. I had added Git Toolbox and Git Worktree. It's not something you guys have to install, but it's kind of handy. If you come down here at the lower left-hand corner, you'll see this little Git, and it will actually build you a tree of everything you've done all along the way. It's kind of a nice visual representation of what you guys have done on your given project. When you get to your final project, that's pretty handy. The reason for the toolbox one is if you're working with multiple people, it has the option of Git blame, which is pretty cool. When you're working with multiple people, if I click on a given line, it tells me exactly who committed that line and when they committed that. So again, when you guys are just using it on your own in your own project, probably not very helpful. But it could at least tell you when you did your last commit for that line. But the other day I was working with some other people on a project and it was like, all right, who did this line of code? Because it broke everything. And it turns out Git actually has a function built in called Git blame.
So is that plugin something that you install globally to PyCharm, or is that something you have to install in your virtual environment?
It's a plugin to PyCharm as a whole.
Okay.
Some cases you can turn them off and on per project. So like for my individual projects, I may not want it turned on kind of thing. And I can actually uncheck those for this particular project.
Okay.
So like here, I could take off those two and hit apply and okay. And then it just asks me to restart the IDE. And that way it won't interfere with what you guys see there. If you're a VS Code person, they had very similar plugins for that as well. Those are just some advanced features I was covering with some other people yesterday. Okay, cool. So we should have all of our quote unquote skeletons and all of that working just fine. There, you'll notice we are not getting a red flag up here or a gray banner that says you're missing all these packages. So we should be good on that part. Let's make sure the indexing and all that finishes up. Okay. And it looks like we're missing this extra package from Pandas that would make things a little easier. So let's go ahead and add that. Index up a little bit. Okay, so let's look at what this program built. And so you'll notice that all of our imports are up as you would expect them to be, NumPy, Pandas, Streamlit. We're going to use that Plotly Express. That was something we talked about in the past. You'll notice that out of the sklearn packages, we're using things to gain our statistics like logistical regression, Scalure, some other packages out there, okay? So make sure you know what you're trying to get imported or what it's providing for us. You'll notice it sets up our set page config. This is something we did in our last one. And we can adjust and tweak these settings. You'll notice in this case, the first one it's doing is the Fort Hays state and then doing a placement type dashboard. Okay. It found the gold colors that we're looking for. We may want to use those to tweak later down the road. You'll notice it set them up as variables so that in the actual code itself, we simply move it one time up here and it would adjust everything else. So we'll take a look at that in the code and see if that helps us. One thing that's handy, used to be in here. Let's see if it's still in here. It used to be able to let you see that color over here. That might only work in an actual CSS file. I think that's the case. Yep, looks like that's the case here. Otherwise, what's nice about the PyCharm editor is it would let you see the colors when you do colors like that so that you can modify them with a little color wheel, that kind of stuff. So the first thing it's going to do is look for loading the data. Now note that the code wanted you to put that in mount data collegeplacement.csv. That's probably not the best case. It's having you do that in ChatGPT because that's where it located it. So we might want to move that to something like just straight data / collegeplacement.csv, in which case we need to create a data folder. And then inside that data folder, we need to copy in that college placement file. Okay. And let's go back to the main. Notice that college placement is spelled right. Let's go here, make sure the spelling is correct. Because if this does not match this, we're going to have a problem when it tries to actually load everything up. So just like we've done in the past, it's going to go ahead and load the college placement data as a data frame in Pandas. It's going to go ahead and standardize some of the columns, making sure that we have columns like internship experience, placement, college ID, builds out the columns that we want. Then in the Markdown itself, and notice that we decided to use Markdown, we're going to set this up so that it gives us some color, sets up a placement, that all looks good. We have this unsafe allow HTML. This would be if we're having people type things in. You may want to adjust that so that it actually does some checking there. We're set up our sidebar. You'll note that we set up our tabs that go across the top with the different tabs defined. Remember, with every one of those, we are using with statements so that it's all running simultaneously in the code. That's part of the Streamlit stuff that we did in the past. So this all looks good, building out some charts and what we want. So let's go ahead and just run this file and let's see what happens. You'll notice we get some breaks, lots of missing exceptions, and then it ends, right? Remember to run a Streamlit, you have to come in here and let's do Streamlit main.py. Streamlit run, sorry. And we're getting some exceptions. So let's see here. Strup, I can't spell. There we go. We got our little website here. And it built something like the Fort Hays dashboard that we were talking about. So look, it gave us a gradient. That's obviously not a very good look of what we were doing there. So we have a couple options there to go ahead and filter that out. You'll also notice over here on the left, it's pulling it out by colleges. That's not really accurate based off our data. Those are just specific IDs. Possibly. Let's go look at our data to make sure.
That average IQ can't be right.
Right, college ID. So yeah, these are individual colleges that may end up matching up there. But I also know there's way more IDs than what is there. Okay, yeah, there it actually showed it. So it pulled data from 100 different colleges, which means we probably want to change the name of this, right? It's not the Fort Hays State University placement. We would just say United States of America college placement over 100 colleges. Yeah, average IQ is 100. That's probably right based off what this data set is showing. Yeah, that looks pretty accurate. We could also do filters over here on the left. So this looks good. This red color probably isn't the best if we were building the Fort Hays website. So we could come back to our ChatGPT and let's say something like the items in the sidebar are red. Can we make them gold? So what this is going to do is just override that CSS that we had set up for that. We're going to pull this section out. And this is a lot of what you will get when you work with ChatGPT. It's only going to affect the code that was relevant to that. So we need to copy this, in this case, and adjust just that one little piece. Now, my recommendation when you're dealing with this is to copy all of this, right? And say, please update this code and hit enter. Now you'll notice when I did that, I write what I want up here at the top, hold shift and hit enter so that it doesn't send it and it actually brings you down a couple lines and then paste it in. If you do it in this fashion, it has the full context of your entire script so that it doesn't forget what it was doing in the prior section. And that way you can have it update the entire section. The idea there too is I could just come in, copy code now. It says rest of your code below. We actually don't want that. Just say, please give me the entire file. You got to kind of work with it a little bit and tell it, always give me the full file.
So like in my instructions on mine, I actually, the make directory file, like I put that, like I want this to be the format you use for this all the time because I had already worked on it, like, when I fix stuff.
Right.
So the instructions for my project, as I built stuff, I said, hey, this is the stuff I never want changed. Is that okay to do too?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal here is that you guys, if you haven't really worked with an LLM, these are the gotchas you'll run into.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was okay because it's not going to be like in the chat log. It's going to be in the instructions.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So if that's the case, would you like to see the instructions? Like if I say, hey, I have additional instructions, like make directory always do that. Because I have stuff like that. And like I have all the requirements
inside of there.
Inside, like what I do is like I do like a file that says the requirements for this assignment are at the end of this. Let's double check to see if it matches the requirements. Just so kind of because I've noticed sometimes it'll go, oh, I forgot to do this, or we didn't do, or, you didn't mention you wanted this in the code, but the instructor said this.
And that really works when you create your own GPT.
Okay,
because that's what you're doing, right? You're setting the system message.
I'm just doing a project.
Okay. Yep. Same concept. When you do a project here. And that is useful to use those projects. You could just say something like Streamlit.
Didn't mean to derail it. That's what I was doing was I put the instructions in there. Like I give it files, like here's the requirements. So that way it can always double check itself because I found it does less errors that way.
Usually, yep. And then in this project, you could go in and set the actual settings for what it responds to.
The right-hand corner, they moved in and add instructions.
There you go. Yeah, so there you could kind of give it a tone and it just remodels.
Yeah, and
the
like I
ChatGPT for
said,
that.
make sure, like, I want to have the data, like, I just said, if I don't mention it, always add the make directory. That way for the data and stuff, so that it doesn't, I don't forget to say it or whatever.
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was okay.
So this all looks good, and then, it's gonna keep giving you suggestions on different things you can add, which is great. Just don't let it get too far over the top, is what I found. It'll always give you, hey, we should add this, or hey, we should add that. Great. Do those as individual commits. Make sense? So that you can always roll back if you don't end up liking something. So we have this option here. Let's go ahead and copy this in. And we know for the most part, all it really did was change our CSS. So if we run this again, whoops, don't do that. Run it the other way, the right way. From in here, Control C to stop, rerun your app. And there you go. It adjusted all the gold CSS that we wanted to over on the left. And then tabs over here in the middle so that we can get different types of charts based off placement, some heat maps that we wanted to go through, experience, predictive analysis. So this is just the idea here, is making sure that you can work between the two files. When you start working with the bigger frameworks, it's a little hairier because it's going to say update this file for this, update this file for that, and this over here and do that. I'm not sure the free one, that's what I wanted to test here, is if we start a new chat and we do a plus, can you do more? And can connect to the web, but it doesn't look like it's going to let you do GitHub on the free one. Okay.
You can, but if you do a web search, you can point at your repository.
Yeah.
And that does, you can say, hey, review my repository.
So let's try, make sure this pulls up here. There again, with the AI portion, if you click this little squiggly mark over here, it's going to go ahead and write you a commit message, which is pretty handy. At least when I used it in the past. There it goes. So that looks good. Let's commit push. Okay. And so like he was saying, we come out here, refresh, make sure we got our repo here. And then if you take your repo listing, because it's public, you can say, and you may need to click the plus and add the web search portion so it knows that it can go out to the web. Sometimes it works without it, but it's nice to put it in there if you are. Okay, and there you go. You can pull a request batch that will replace your existing Pi with an updated Gold Bar side version, or I can send you a diff to do that locally. So in this case, what's interesting that I've seen here is be like, can you update that code to include the map of Hayes, Kansas? So we can see a map like that. It's going to again tell you the extra pieces you could add in, tell you what to change in your main code. And this will say, let me prepare a pull request patch for your repo for the map addition, or you could adjust it on your local CSV. So let's try that pull request just to see what it actually does. Because at one point I did this and it didn't quite work. Okay, it's going to add those packages and everything like we told it to. If you can confirm, it is main.py. That's what we called it. Okay. And again, it can generate the full thing if you wanted to. Otherwise, all we have to do is add the Folium and the Streamlit stuff to our requirements, because that's not going to be able to be added in that side. We will need to add those based off when we actually install. So just follow some directions here. And let's add those. So let's control there. Let's pip install Folium. Here. And Streamlit Folium.
See it just so you know.
Yeah. Okay. So that was what it wanted us to add in. Let's update our pip requirements. That looks good. And if we follow this, go ahead, commit this patch into a new branch, and we can push or pull request inside of there. A lot of that you could do back out here on this here. So if we wanted to do a push or pull request, we could do that. The only reason I went through that activity is I wanted to see if it could actually connect, because I've done ones that will actually connect out here. So if we do a new pull request, let's see here. Sometimes you could go out there and do that. I don't really see a good reason to do it that way, based off what you guys would have access to in the free version. So, and like I said, I have to record this every year because this changes every day, let alone year. In this case, we would say instead generate a full updated main.py. And you guys could work with that.
But on the pay one, it could just edit your.
Yeah, and the pay one, I've seen it where it'll just straight up connect to the GitHub repo, and then I can.
So as you're editing, it would just be editing the GitHub repo.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
Yep.
And if you wanted to pull that because it would be committing to it.
You can have it with the ability to commit. What it does is you make it open to the public. They submit all their changes, and then you accept those changes in.
On the GitHub website?
Yeah.
Neat.
So that all looks good. We could actually end up copying this code, again, overriding what we had in our main.py. Let's check to make sure that is doing what we want it to do. That all looks good. And where's that map? There's the map. So it added this little map for us to know where Fort Hays was. Okay. Again, that's the beauty of Streamlit, is the code that actually add this little map. We come up here, experience tab, where is the overview tab? And there's the map. So it just added this little bit of code right here, included that entire map, which again, if you guys have ever done that kind of stuff in actual CSS and HTML code, there's a whole lot of stuff you got to do in order to make that work. So Streamlit is really quick and easy. There's so many plugins and things to get things up and running in a short amount of time. And then up above here, it added some additional code simply to set our location and things like that. Where did I see that at? And there were some settings there for that purpose. Oh, it pulled it straight in. Okay. All right. So that's one thing with Streamlit. Another reason that I would recommend using this kind of stuff is if we came out here and do a new chat, and you could say, I am looking to build a Flask project that will help me organize my CD collection. I want to connect to an API to pull album covers and be able to categorize spelling is horrible today. Them by year and genre. Okay. I do want this to go into a SQLite database. Please give me instructions step by step for setting this up in PyCharm and GitHub. I normally create the project in GitHub first and then check it out in PyCharm. And so the reason I want you guys to go through these exercises is it's going to help give you the step-by-step instructions as you go through there. So it's really to get you organized as to how you would do that. It'll get you the initial setup of things because even as you learn all these steps, there's things you're going to forget on how to do. And so this will help you walk through step-by-step on how that goes through there. Normally you wouldn't, in the old days, we didn't have the nice thinking algorithms and everything that we have now. It would just immediately start spitting stuff out and it would hallucinate a lot as to what was going on.
The old days,
I
2
say
years
the old
ago.
days, like last year, it would do that kind of stuff. So I'm anxious to see what it does this year in providing that.
And Claude just came out with an update today too.
Did it?
Yeah, they have a new coding execution thing.
Nice.
So, and it also accesses your GitHub, but it can't edit it. What it does when you add files, if you use Claude, you use GitHub connector, just so you know, what it does, it just says, oh, I'll just like it's like adding as an attachment.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason to really do it. Just
it pulls in a copy of it.
Yeah, just paste your stuff in.
So this is going to give you a bunch of different information, prereqs, how to set all this up. Again, we can obviously move through that. But what is really nice, and this is the case, is getting your project layout. All right. Because this will make sure that you're not missing any miscellaneous files. You could add some things to your git ignore, and then a quick start single file. In this case, you're going to use a single file. There may be a case where you need more. And in this case, you do. You have your templates. You will have your base file, which will cover all this when we talk about Flask. You'll have your index file, and then your individual album files and everything in between. The idea here is that it gives you a nice step-by-step flow. It's not going to give you all the answers. As a matter of fact, you're going to run this and be like, that's not right. So use it with a grain of salt. Use it as a guide to help you move forward. As you add a bunch of different ones in here, we talked about using an API in order to pull this in, right? And this is like an example project of a final project. Obviously, don't use this one because I just did it. But this is the level of what I would be looking for is you connecting now to some API in order to make that work. So in this case, you could see something like disk cogs here requires an API key, but has registration and rate limits. All right. So you could work through these so you could figure out which one is going to work best for you as an API. And then also next steps is being able to import all your information. You could create unit tests. We'll talk about what all that stuff means when we get to that stage. All right. Same way with the Django project. Let's do something like this. You can actually click on the same one. What about Django? Would this project make more sense as a Flask project versus a Django project? And this is the kind of stuff that you could use this for and information to help decide which framework you should probably use overall. It'll help give you some pros and cons. Not everything is correct, right? But it will help you decide which one of these is probably going through along with the recommendation inside of this side. You could always start with Flask as a scaffold and then port to Django. It's saying for Flask is going to be more fun and lightweight. That is true, that Flask is extremely lightweight. You kind of have to build everything. Where Django is this ready to go collection with an admin site, and you guys could add things to the back end and that kind of thing. We could also do something like, what about Streamlit? Is that a viable option? There you go. And it's going to explain some of why you would use Streamlit, where it's best fit, and the comparison all over there. So if you want a personal interactive tool to browse around, Streamlit might be your better choice, right? If I want to browse my album collection and bring stuff in. If you want a traditional website where other people can log in, manage your CD collection, then something like Django or even Flask if you want to build everything out from scratch. So I encourage you to use the ChatGPT in this manner when you get to your final project to kind of help you flesh out what is the best solution for what it is you're trying to do. Remember, prior students didn't have cool tools like this. They had to do the analysis themselves. Well, guess what? We're in the world today where you have access to these. Your employer is going to expect you to get it done and get it done fast. There you go. Now, you have to be careful, right? If you guys are using sensitive data in your projects, you probably don't want to commit your code out there. If you're working for a company, you probably don't want to commit your code out there, right? Because in the free one, for the most part, it's going to go ahead and use it as training for other LLMs or other models. And yes, they tend to have the option where you can say, don't do that. I'll be honest, I don't trust any of that, and neither should you, right? There's companies out there that have been hammered with, hey, how do I fix this issue? And then realize they literally just leaked the code on the internet at that point, right? So there's a time and a place for this kind of stuff. And these projects, obviously, using ChatGPT is fine. If you have the paid for version, which there I can start to respect a little bit whether or not they actually use it to train their model, you're paying for it. So you at least have some legality purposes in there in order to keep that going. That's just ChatGPT. Obviously, there's Claude. I don't care which ones you use and everything in there. The one thing we did talk about is the ability to click up here on share. And this will give you a link to the actual code, any custom instructions you did, and any messages you added after sharing the content. So if we create content link, and we can go ahead and copy that link, then when you guys build out your README, there is a section you guys had down at the very bottom that was for your insights. Make sure you copy and paste that share out there.
If you share that, if I add questions to it, do I have to add a new share?
I believe so, yes. Yep. So it would just be at the very end of your project after everything's done. Go ahead and set that link there. It may keep going, but I can't remember. Last time I did it, you had to change it. So
good to know.
And then if you want to delete the share for that particular thing, now note you are posting this on GitHub, so it is going to be public. So if you're one of those that likes to yell and scream and call ChatGPT bad things, you're making that public to both me and literally the world at this point. So I would encourage you, like if you are going to use this, we created this quote Streamlit project. I encourage you to create a project for your final project or even your Flask and Django projects that you ask a bunch of chats related to that because it knows context. The whole purpose of this is it keeps context within a realm. Anybody got any questions on use of AI and playing with that? How about online, Jamie?
So when you're sharing like that, I use ChatGPT to help me with my mini project 2 graphs. But whenever I try to share, I get like when I open it up in a incognito window, it tells me that it can't display. I don't remember exactly what the error message is, but the conversation's inaccessible or not found, and you may need to switch accounts or request access. Is that like I'm using a paid for version? Is that possibly why that's doing that? I'm just trying to figure out what I need to do to get you to be able to see what I'm using it for.
It depends on what you're ended up sharing out there. So like here, we can see that I can get everything in here. What I probably can't see is the CSV project. Well, this is the album one, right? If you upload files to it, that can sometimes cause problems where you will get error messages like the one you're seeing. Or if you have it generate images or things like that, then all of a sudden that feature tends to break down and it can't do that.
Okay.
Or in your case, if you are logged into a private account, it did give you the message that you may have to give permissions for that to work. In which case you can come into your overall settings. I can remember that's it. There we go. Settings. And then security. And where was that option there? Shared links, manage. And therefore you could adjust those if you need to do that. So that way it would delete. I believe they're only good for so long too. So if they've gone out of date, it may not work there as well. And notice here you have that option set for improve the model for everyone. You could theoretically switch that off and then hit done. And now it's not going to use your data for that. Even though I just said stop and hit done. Okay.
So you think if that chat, if I share that link, you think that'll work then?
Why don't you try sharing it into the Zoom chat so we can check it now?
Yeah. Yeah. If you have an example, I can test it. If for some reason you do something and it doesn't work, that's fine. Obviously, when I like for your final project is where I ultimately care. I will look for you guys just to show me your chat conversation with whichever one you use, right? Because it's saving it on the left. Make sure you keep a copy of it in your chats and you can come back and say, here's my chat. Here's how I interacted with it.
I will say with large projects like this, because I was fiddling around with Python stuff. I got ChatGPT got to the point where, you can see it typing.
Yeah.
It would show 4 letters and then stop. I'm like, oh, my window's, frozen. But I would see the top, it was like trying to load. Like, oh. And then about 5 minutes later, it's like, here's your page.
Yeah.
So just be aware that the longer the conversation gets, the more the ChatGPT will get grumpy.
Especially if you're on the free version. Yeah. Because you get lower priority on that stuff.
So Jason, I put my link to my share in the chat.
Yeah, and so in your case, there again, you may have to adjust your settings to see if there's something that would allow you to have outside access. So let me pause the recording here. Okay, so what we found out is if you do have a workspace account, it will not work as to what's inside there. But if you're using the free one, in theory, it should work just fine as long as you have your settings in here in a way that would allow you to do it. So on data controls with these shared links, you could do that. Again, all I ask is I'm mostly worried that if you can't submit that or it's not working, save your chat over here on the left. If during the final project I have concerns, I'll have you bring up that particular chat. At the end of the day, my goal is that you guys use it as kind of a guardrail guideline to get you further along. When we start working on like Flask and Django, if you are having troubles with a UI design thing and you're not a web developer, use ChatGPT to help you get that UI design. I'm fine with that, right? A lot of you guys are cyber or networking or whatever else coming in here, computer science, etc. You are not meant to be web developers. That's not what you wanted to do, right? You wanted something over here. Let something like this help you build a UI so that you can move forward on your project. Because when we start working on these projects, both mini project 3, 4, and your final project, time management is what messes up most students. They really want this little knob to work. They've spent 4 weeks on it, and now all of a sudden it's finals week. And they have not got past mini project 3. It's a problem. So time management, don't get stuck. Use some tools like this to help you. Remember that little widget, as much as you want it to work, make sure you're checking your points, that you're not spending time on a widget that is 1 point if it doesn't work versus something like a README file worth 20 points of your project. I get it. Trust me, when you get into these projects, you want them to just work. And we can do that. We'll have some time for that on your final project when we do your meetings and such, but I've seen it time and time again. People dwell too long on stuff that just doesn't matter. All right. In terms of Thursday, I don't really have anything in this regard. This should be a week that you go test and play and go work with these different tools. Like I said, this changes every year. The way I taught ChatGPT, you could go look at the old video, but that's last year's version, and I guarantee it doesn't match this year at all. So, but the idea, the concepts of what we did last year, that should still work. You're just going to get better enhancements with this year's version of it, is really what it boils down to.
Every year we teach this class, it's new basically.
Oh yeah, that it changes so fast every year. I got to re-record.
Beauty of technology.
Yep, which is cool though. I mean, like I said, it's gotten light years better in the last 3 and 4 years. It's not even really
compared to when it first came out.
Yeah, but I know in 360 I preach no AI, no. In this one, use it to your advantage. Use it smartly. Don't rely on it, because when we get into Flask and Django, it's going to forget things, and you're going to have to be like, that's not how we did that. We actually did it this way, and you'll have to submit that file. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it this way. And then it'll go there, and you'll do about 20 more minutes of talking to it, and then it's going to forget everything you just talked about, right? So use it as a tool, but as a tool with amnesia, so you kind of have to work accordingly, right?
I'm glad my car has amnesia.
Right.
It forgot to fill itself up.
Sam, Jamie, you guys got any other questions or thoughts?
No, I'm good.
All right. Use the rest of
I'm
the
good.
Okay, great, Sam. Use the rest of this week to finish up anything in mini project 2. So I know I was supposed to have mini project 1 graded last week. Honestly, using the student fundraiser and everything else, I didn't get there. So I am going to get there today. And try to have those all graded out before Thursday. You guys will have your grades on mini project 1. Make sure you get mini project 2 completed and submitted so that I will get that graded immediately. And you'll have at least those 2 grades in this class before midterm, which we're coming up to in a week. We're at midterm. This is week 7. Next week is week 8.
That came fast.
When did that happen?
It came real fast. Yeah.
Oh,
Remember what I said about time management? Because the next 8 weeks is going to be extremely fast.
it doesn't feel like it's only been a month.
Yeah.
What?
So next week, we are going to start in on Flask. That takes 2 weeks. We'll do Django. That takes 2 weeks. And then you are into your final project.
Oh, God.
And remember that you can use your Flask project or your Django project as a stair step to your final project. So if you're working on either one of those and be like, yeah, I'd really like to just extend this out for my final project, that's perfectly fine.
Or Streamlit or whatever.
Yep, or Streamlit.
Because I want to make a dashboard for the cyber ops.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ideally, that would be.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Jason, do you want to see if we can schedule that meeting?
I do. Yep. Let me stop this recording.